thank you so much. So good to be here. And I hope you don't mind if I start today actually with a horror story. So just bear with me for a couple of minutes, okay? So just imagine a country where there is a sweeping wave of new Sharia courts defended by the government as an appropriate way to introduce the ancient laws of Islam to Western society. Mosques where native men are radicalized to the point they plan IED attacks against the people they went to school with, while learning they must push gay men like me off the top of skyscrapers and being convinced that the women should not leave the house unless they're entirely shrouded by a dehumanizing burqa. There is an advanced plan to introduce a blasphemy law through the back door, making criticizing the tenets of any of the barbaric religion a crime punishable with a prison sentence. A head of state who pledged to be the defender of the Christian faith, deciding to align more closely to the challenger religion, which seeks to conquer. Police whose sole aim is to patrol the social media posts of the Indigenous population, going door to door, but not to try and tackle the sweeping violent crimes in major cities where police now routinely fail to respond to muggings or burglaries, with well over 90% of crime remaining unsolved. But they would rather shut down free speech online. There's high-profile celebrities who post on X, for example, criticism of trans extremism, which we know is being used to chip away at women's rights. And they will be arrested on entry to the country by 5 armed police to send a message to the world: you have no freedom when you are here. A daily invasion of murderers, of rapists, of terrorists arriving by boat to launch large-scale crime syndicates from 4-star hotels paid for by taxpayers in the middle of terrified communities. It's impossible to even leave your house and speak on the phone in city centres without being mugged by gangs of hooded youths on electric bikes. Successive governments who have promised to reduce immigration for decades are actually complicit in a globalist plot to destroy our secure borders once and for all. And when we finally get a prime minister who attempts to fight the status quo, they are defenestrated in an anti-democratic globalist coup within 6 weeks. Meanwhile, there is a complicit and corrupt regime media which controls the narrative, deriding patriots attempting to stand up for the country they were once prepared to fight and die for as far-right extremists and racists. Indeed, if you stand up against these dark forces taking control of a once great country, you will find yourself almost immediately cancelled. Trust me, I know. Now, sadly, I am not presenting some sort of dystopian hellscape of where the United Kingdom could end up in a few decades. I promise you, everything I've just said is the reality of where we are today. That is the United Kingdom today, and things are only about to get worse. The state of our country, I believe, provides an ominous warning to Australia and to the rest of the Western world about what happens if the elite class, with the deep state working in conjunction with the MSM, gaslight, deride, and ignore voters for a generation. So today I come to CPAC Australia, sadly, not with a message of hope, but with a call to help us. Help us before it's too late, and help us before this happens to you. Because if the type of scenario that I have just outlined can become real in the UK, the UK, the inventor of parliamentary democracy, the home of the Magna Carta, then it truly can happen anywhere. Like Australia, the UK is an island nation, so it has become impossible for me to believe that the destruction is anything other than willful. And we have a population that for so many decades has been lied to, but is now finally starting to wake up. And exactly a week ago today, I was one of well over 1 million patriots on the streets of central London. Although, as you may have read, the police and the MSM ludicrously reported that just 150,000 showed up, right? Even though, if you looked at the aerial footage, even the aerial footage filmed by The Guardian, it told a very different story. But the Unite the Kingdom rally, organised by Tommy Robinson, a patriot who has long been... And Tommy Robinson is a patriot who has long been presented as some kind of enemy of the state, felt like a rare moment of hope for a country that has been bashed into subservience over many years. And we all have our radicalization moment, right? So mine came in 2016 when the dark forces of the deep state decided they wanted to overturn the biggest democratic decision in British history, which was the vote to Brexit and take back control of our borders. And they tried to do that by refusing to leave the EU. And indeed, they became perilously close to succeeding. That was then followed, of course, and we all know about this, you suffered it here too, by the debilitating lockdowns of 2020, which were so clearly designed to destroy our economy and also our very way of life. So Saturday for me in the United Kingdom was a fight back, but it wasn't violent in any way because the vast majority of the people on the streets with their St. George's flags, with their Union Jacks, were mums and dads proudly raising the colours, an action that should be normal, right, in a proud country. But it is an action that has strangely become some sort of sign of resistance against the status quo. And so surely, given the picture I've just painted, there was no way that they were going to be able to use all of their usual tropes to trash this group of patriots. Surely we were finally going to be listened to. Hell no, hell no. The MSM were actually disgraceful in their coverage, with headlines suggesting the capital city was braced for violence and constant reporting about how minorities felt unsafe around the demonstration, which conveniently ignored the fact that the march was full of minorities. And this is where I hope to make a difference, because my entry into the world of the independent media is actually pretty typical. I was cancelled from the MSM because I came too close to the truth. And of course, it was a faux scandal that ended up bringing me down. For those who don't know, I had been the launch presenter of GB News, which was the UK's attempt to offer some degree of plurality versus our hard left media organisations, specifically the British Bashing Corporation, as I call the BBC, Woke ITV, and Sly News. And I should clarify that our Sly News is very, very different to Sky News Australia. It is owned by Comcast, as Donald Trump calls it, the home of MSDNC. So you have some type of idea about where they stand politically. And initially, all of this group had laughed at GB News. Our launch was rocky, to say the least, and the newspapers predicted we'd actually be off the air within months. But by the time I was cancelled, in what was a confected left-wing campaign, my show on GB News was #1 in the ratings, and we know what they do to those types of threats. They take them out. And in my case, I mean, it really was totally ludicrous. This scandal where Lawrence Fox, I don't know if you guys know him, but he is an actor turned provocateur, and he appeared on my show. And remember, my show aired after the watershed, right? Like there were no children watching. It was quite rollicking, good fun, a bit like Paul Murray or something like that on Sky News Australia. And he said, Lawrence Fox told me that he didn't want to shag, and yes, he did use that word, a particularly ghastly left-wing female commentator who had been campaigning against the idea of there being the creation of a minister for men in the UK, even though male suicide rates are now a national emergency. So I giggled, right, a little bit uncomfortably, but the critical thing is that I refuse to apologise. I refuse to apologise for Lawrence Fox's speech, even though it may have been on the spicy side. All hell broke loose. As I say, this was a confected outrage designed to cancel me. And very sadly, GB News gave in to those forces that I believe they had been established to fight against. And we know similar tales have been experienced by so many great people on both sides of the Atlantic. Roseanne Barr, Megyn Kelly, Sharon Osbourne, Piers Morgan, Katie Hopkins, Tucker Carlson, Father Calvin Robinson. I mean, the list goes on and on and on, which is why I have to say, I just laugh at the fake leftist outrage this week over Jimmy Kimmel. Because if he was on the right, he would never work again. And they have been doing this to us for years. But what is actually quite amazing about going through an MSM cancellation is that once you're out the other side, you really realize that you need to have a sense of fearlessness and freedom. And the fact that I am no longer working for billionaires, and I've worked for them all, you know, Rupert Murdoch, the Rothermeres, Paul Marshall, all of them great men in some ways, but all of them with their own motives. And the freedom that you have not being controlled by anyone and only working for your audience is completely liberating as a journalist. And I've launched my own channel since GB News. It's called Dan Wootton Outspoken. And last week, when Elon Musk appeared on VideoLink for what was a truly fascinating interview alongside Tommy Robinson at Unite the Kingdom, where he warned Brits that violence was coming, whether we like it or not, unless we fight back, I was broadcasting what was said to well over 1 million patriots on YouTube alone. GB News did not carry a single second of Tommy on stage because he is cancelled by them. And I think that sums up why even the right of the mainstream media isn't necessarily fit to cover what's really happening in our country, because they do have so many conflicted interests. In fact, Tommy Robinson is saying nothing about the Islam takeover of the United Kingdom that the late Charlie Kirk hadn't expressed for many years, or which Douglas Murray has been eloquently writing about in The Spectator for over a decade. And I love Douglas and I love Charlie, but the difference is, of course, that Douglas is Oxbridge educated with a clipped English accent, and Tommy is a rough around the edges, working class hero from Luton. Of course, many of you will no doubt say to me, and I've had it already today, Dan, your saviour is coming in the form of Nigel Farage. And trust me, I really hope that is the case. And I say from the outset, I was a close colleague of Nigel for the launch of GB News and view him as a friend. But I don't know if you realise that a few months ago, Nigel, as the leader of Reform UK, told his employers at GB News in an interview that mass deportation of hundreds of thousands in the UK. Remember, we probably have over 2 million illegally in the United Kingdom, and that is a Conservative estimate, was impossible. He said, I don't even want to go down that path. And he even gave an interview to the left-wing New Statesman magazine saying he wanted his immigration policy at the next election to be the left of the Conservative Party. That's true, that all happened, and it clearly wasn't good enough, right? Like, that is not what we need. That is not the revolution that we need to save the United Kingdom. So the so-called online right, which you may have heard spoken about it, I'm now considered a part, we fought back. And we called out this soft immigration policy. And we won. Because just last month, at a very slick press conference in an airport hangar, Nigel Farage did a total 180 and announced Operation Restoring Justice, which is a plan to deport 600,000 illegals in his first term of government, remembering that is something that he had said was impossible just 6 months earlier. So the Overton window had shifted, and it had shifted in large part because of the commentary in the independent media space online, because of the commentary on Elon Musk's X. And that's my job now. That is how I view my purpose in terms of trying to save my country. And that means not being part of any political party or mainstream broadcaster, as difficult as that can be. And we actually saw something very similar happen over the summer, when a group of patriotic mums in Essex, dressed in pink, the Pink Ladies, began a protest outside the Bell Hotel in Epping. Now, this is where an Eritrean man had sexually assaulted a 14-year-old girl on the local high street. He had been in the country for just 8 days after arriving on a small boat via the Channel. And Epping, Essex became ground zero of a migrant hotel uprising which swept the country across the summer and resulted in this wonderful campaign to raise the colours, a patriotic push to fly the Union Jack, fly the St. George's flag wherever possible, something that many left-wing councils decided was beyond the pale. And you might want to know why there is this sudden push to re-embrace patriotism. And I think it is in part because of these statistics which were revealed earlier in the summer, showing that white Brits are on track to become a minority in our own country within just 4 decades. I actually believe the current birth rates mean it will happen much, much sooner. And this is not a fantasy, right? This is not a conspiracy theory. That is already the case in London, in Leicester, in Birmingham, in Manchester. The white population is a minority in the biggest cities in the United Kingdom. And the problem is that in the UK, even discussing this quite clearly unacceptable reality will see you branded as a white supremacist, which is exactly what the Daily Telegraph columnist Camilla Tominey, apparently another woman on the right, as a flagship presenter at GB News, called Tommy Robinson on national TV just the other day. Now, later, when she was justifying that description, I want to tell you what her justification for it was. She said of Tommy Robinson, he doesn't want what he describes as an Islamification of Great Britain to take place, and therefore that's a degree of supremacy of Judeo-Christianity over Islam. So, crazy, right? Is that what we are now dealing with? You will be subjected to ad hominem attacks from your own side of the political aisle simply for trying to justify keeping the United Kingdom Christian. And unfortunately, I come to a very sad conclusion. The elite class in the United Kingdom hates our country. Our Prime Minister, Slippery Starmer, as I call him, is clearly anti-British. He is the globalist's dream, a puppet on the string of Tony Blair, with two sole aims: to introduce digital ID into the country and enforce this Islamophobia law. At that point, I am convinced he will be replaced by someone even further to the left. So we are in trouble, and I hope you can see we are in trouble. And as I say, I don't come here with a message of hope today, because we have so much fighting to do. But what my message to Australians is very clear. Do not be complacent, because we were. And complacency kills. Brits were complacent. We believed successive governments of both the left and the right, the Uni Party, that they were going to protect our borders, that they were going to reduce immigration. And they lied, and we are now in deep, deep trouble. So please, even though you may not be in a situation as bad as the one that we are in today, and I know it is a depressing message, I hope it also provides real motivation to keep up the fight. Thank you so much. Thank you.